I'm John Taplin. I'm the director of the Annenberg Innovation Lab. I'm sorry there aren't any students here, or not many, but I started my life as and this is my partner, Erin Riley, who is the creative director of the lab, and we're going to share this presentation. I've spent most of my life producing movies, television, music, with artists like Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Marty Scorsese, the band. And so one of the things that's been great about the lab is that somehow we've been able to pull in the notion of where's the history and where's the world of media and entertainment going in the future, not just in the past. So the lab is basically funded by these companies, and as you can see, it's a kind of wide range of companies that are both in the media business, in the technology business, and in the telecom business, with a few outliers like Jaguar and Levi Strauss, which are companies that are kind of cutting-edge consumer companies that are interested in some of the issues that we deal with, such as transmedia, branding, and stuff like that. The lab is really structured around a group of what we call the Research Council, so a group of professors from many different schools. From Annenberg, I would say our most important people are Henry Jenkins, Francois Barr, Gabriel Kahn, Susan Resnick-West. Outside the lab from Viterbi, we have, we think, three of the most brilliant people at the Viterbi School. So Sri Narayan, who works with us on social sentiment analytics, and we have Giuseppe Kerr and Andy Malish, who are probably the most cutting-edge researchers on electrical engineering and the future of mobile phones. And then we have people from Rossier, Anthony Maddox, from the Price School, like Elizabeth Curled-Hackett. So it's a really kind of interesting, truly interdisciplinary group of people, and so we're pretty proud of that. So I'm going to just briefly talk about our new project, which is called the Edison Project. And this came about because a lot of our partners have said to us, look, the media and entertainment business is going through this just radical shift, and everything that we've lived on and all the existence thing is maybe crumbling, and so we want to look at it from a global point of view. So we start from this, which is that this should be the greatest time in the history of the media and entertainment business, because the global middle class is growing astronomically fast. If you look at the spending in Asia, it's going to go from 4.8 trillion a year to 32.6 trillion a year. And so when people get out of poverty and have a little discretionary income, the first thing they do is get one of these babies. And then they maybe get a television, and then they go to the movies, and then only after that, when they get a lot more money, they get a house or a car. So we start from this premise, and this is, I know, a kind of silly slide that was made by our friends at Facebook, who are also partners with us, but it's a true slide. There will be 5 billion smartphones by the end of 2016. And that just radically changes the economics of entertainment and media. So if, for instance, your little tune or your 15-minute show that you've built, you could get 50 cents for it, and you could get 1% of that market. That would be $25 million. So where we come at this is that the access to media, and what this device does is it becomes a permission device. It's not that you're going to watch a lot of shows on this, but when you go into your hotel room in 2 years, you pull up your Netflix account, and that smart TV in that hotel room will recognize this device and give you permission to play whatever you want in whatever place you want, or you can go to your friend's house and do the same thing. So that world, which a lot of our partners are building, is coming very, very fast. So the old notion that the set-top box or the DVD player were the gateways to the entertainment system are going away quickly. But this raises other problems because, as you all know, there's too much content. We can't find this stuff. And if you look at the music business, this is a chart of 2011 by a Harvard economist named Anita Eversley. 80% of the downloads in the music business went to 1% of the content. So this is a huge problem for companies like Walt Disney that have film libraries that are valued at $15 billion, for companies like Universal Music. Ernie and I were with the president of Universal Music on Tuesday night. They have a music library valued at $8 billion. If people are only listening to the latest Jay-Z and Beyonce tune, those libraries are not worth what they think they are. And so this brings us to one of the big questions that we're going to try and deal with next Friday at our Think and Do, which is, how do you get people to move down the long tail and actually make that theory that Chris Anderson put forth a few years ago a reality? Because it's not a reality today. So that is it the curator? So if Marty Scorsese says, here's my 25 favorite films from the 1950s, would you be inclined to go look at those films on a service like Netflix or Amazon Prime or something like that? Or is it the algorithm, which is, of course, the ideas that Amazon and some other people have, that we can create smart algorithms that will delight you and introduce you to new stuff. So we're working with IBM to try and create new kinds of algorithms, but we also believe that the role of the curator is really important. What we do know is that the younger generation, which are after graduating from college with 50 megabits per second internet speeds, and then maybe having to move back into mom and dad's house, and now they're finally establishing their own homes, they're not buying the $150 cable subscription. They're buying the $19.95 standalone Time Warner fast internet service. And the fact that Time Warner and Comcast and everybody are selling a standalone high-speed broadband service is this notion of cord cutting is really real. And in the home entertainment business, we see the transition from the black DVD to the red streaming is happening much faster than any of the companies that support us would actually prefer. But it's a reality, and everybody's got to get there. So one we do know is, with the exception of sports, this notion of appointment viewing, of showing up at 8 o'clock to watch a show, is dead. It's over with. It will never come back, and whether you watch your content on a DVR or on a streaming service, that is done. So the Edison Project is based around 4 parts of the ecosystem, and Aaron's going to kind of explain how we plan to get deep into these. So new creators and makers, new metrics and measurements, new funding and business model, and new screens. So I'm going to turn it over to Aaron. That actually works.
It works?
A little clicker.
Oh, it does? Okay. So we see all of this disruption, as John has talked about, and really this is a great chance for opportunities. And so how we've kind of devised this multi-year strategy is really around participatory learning experiences, prototypes, and publications. And so, like as John said, we're running a Think and Do in next week. I should be ready for it. Next week on emerging business models in an all-mobile environment. And this will be our second in a series where in November we ran one on re-envisioning the home TV experience. You know, how do we watch TV, but also how do we do TV? So just to kind of drill down on these 4 pillars. You said it worked?
No, this one.
See, it's nowhere. There we go. Here are some of the new creators and makers, and we'll be doing a Think and Do in the fall on these groups. But as you can see, these are ones that never went to syndicate, never were broadcast, and a lot of them are having great success. Let me give you a few examples. Let's take House of Cards from Netflix. They had 14 nominations for the Emmys, won 3. East Los High has now in its second series of Hulu, and they are really focusing on a niche. So a niche that wasn't being served in broadcast is now being served in Hulu. Viki, which is a Korean streaming service, is really interesting because they're crowdsourcing from the community, being able to translate into over 160 different languages so that now their shows are getting worldwide distribution. And Orange is the New Black, which came right on the coattails of House of Cards for Netflix, is actually being shown in 42 different countries. Then we have the new metrics and measurements, which we will follow up with a Think and Do in the fall, but we're already really deep into this. As you can see, I think you've seen in the news the relationships that are going on right now between Twitter and Nielsen, and this is kind of shows the disparity between the two, that what Nielsen is rating as the top ones, which makes sense, right? NBC Sunday Night Football is the best because sports is still the #1 thing that's still being shown live. So we are looking at that in relation to, say, Breaking Bad, that had a huge Twitter following. It wasn't even really on people's watch until Twitter and social media started taking it up. So we're drilling down on a lot of Twitter analytics, which I'm just going to go forward to here really quick, and then I'll come back to that. To tell you about DSAIL, which is led by Francois Barr, who's one of our senior research fellows at the lab. His team has been looking at Twitter now for, 3 years. They've done a lot of different things, but what they're currently working on is really exploring the Black Twitter community. So instead of aggregating everything and looking at positive and negative, they found that it's better to drill down deeper into actually people to follow or things that they're saying about the community. So they've been collecting information on scandal and really beginning to lay out how the people that are viewing scandal also tweet and participate in social media in the larger Black Twitter conversations. Earlier work that they did was in politics, and this is where they realized that sarcasm was a big issue with positive and negative, that a lot of people, when talking about politics, is sarcastic, so it's a false positive, and that's when they realized they needed to move beyond that. We're also doing other types of metrics and measurements beyond Twitter, where we are trying to get public data from Facebook and connecting to a couple of different social media to look at new news. So this came out of our Think and Do on moving away from the 6 o'clock news to having news being able to view it and watch it and participate it anytime, anywhere. So one of the projects you'll be able to see at our March open studio, and then we'll have an evening of innovation in April, is Athena News. You want to say anything about Athena News?
Yeah, Athena News is basically a project between us and Cisco and ABC News to say, could we make a customized evening news broadcast for you based on some inputs from your own Facebook feed, what you're interested in, and some inputs from curation from ABC as to what they think are critical stories, and of the, almost 11 hours that ABC produces every day for the Los Angeles market, could we pick an hour that's just based, that would come for you? And of course, we're going to work with ICT to have a new kind of anchor, who is a virtual anchor, who will then announce the shows. You can talk back to her, you can change, you can tell her, I've already seen that, I want to go to the next show. And so a lot of the work that ICT has been doing in the robotics, virtual human things will be integrated into this project.
And the other project in new metrics and measurements that we're looking in really relates to this NBC Sunday Night Football. In that Havas Media, which is one of our corporate sponsors, asked us to really start looking at what is an international fan strategy engagement that could combine sports media and entertainment. So I come from an entertainment background, so I look at, at fans, because I hang around a lot with Henry. So we're taking the fan approach of looking at logics of audience engagement and seeing if they actually apply to sports media. And this is going to be a mixed methods approach where we're doing observations and interviews and also looking at Twitter, specifically around the World Cup. So the first case study will be a really deep case study on international soccer. So that'll be a nice blend between our entertainment perspectives that we're doing. Then we're doing new funding and business models. So as I said, the Think and Do is this coming next Friday. But some of the things we're going to be looking at is crowdfunding. We've even had success here at the lab with crowdfunding, where last year's Startup and Resident and Crunch winner, Konu, actually succeeded in winning their entire Kickstarter campaign, which then put them on the map for Matter, which is an accelerator in San Francisco, and they actually joined that accelerator. So Veronica Mars, which was a crowdfunding campaign that was run by one of my friends, Ivan Asquith, he talks a lot about how this was like a turning point for entertainment using crowdfunding. And so we're going to drill down on that. There's also kind of a global perspective of how the business models are shaping and changing, and you can look at that with Pacific Rim, where they actually picked and specific clips and edited a different version for China than they showed here in the U.S. And then you can look at the YouTube. YouTube is in the news. A lot of new creators have been emerging in YouTube, and we have a recent article that we just read about the top 10 creators on YouTube. They're making, millions of dollars, $100,000 a month. And so one of the things we want to know is, what is this kind of consumer to prosumer to professional approach in the creation process that you can actually move away from the middlemen? And so machinima, which was one of the first niche markets to really grow in YouTube, there's some real controversy right now because YouTube is saying, oh, you don't need to go to these niche communities, just come straight to us. So I think we'll see in the next 6 to 12 months if these niche communities will need to build different types of partnership and structures with the larger places like YouTube. And then there's the new screens. This is based on our November Think and Do, where we're really looking at, we always keep on thinking, has this in our pocket as a screen or this is a screen, but we actually think we want to expand the idea of how we define a screen. So we started introducing things like the Oculus Rift. We looked at the 3D printer as a screen. We're partnering with KO Entertainment, which is one of the big fanboy production companies. They are giving us access to some Sleepy Hollow material, where we're working on some kind of transmedia approaches of using 3D printing to further engage the fans of the show. And we've got 5 Glass Explorers at the lab, and these Glass Explorers are doing a variety of things, from adding a director's commentary into the screen. So if you're sitting and watching a show with your friend, and your friend, this is the first time they're watching the movie, but you've watched it 5 times, you could be able to have the director's commentary in there. Francesca, who's one of our RAs, is looking at accessibility in movie theaters. So we're trying to build a partnership with a company in Beijing with actually some of our partners like Warner Brothers to really think about the rights of being able to allow people with disabilities to go into movie theaters with their friends and still have a movie experience. So all of these glass, this is just to give you an example of our publications. Every time we're exploring one of these pillars, we are really working on developing these short 100-page publications that we hope to work with the Annenberg Press on, in having every researcher be able to provide a chapter on, say, the 5 different ways we see glass is being used. So play is definitely a key part of our lab. We see it as the ability to experiment with our surroundings as a form of problem solving, and we don't do it just with our research fellows and the faculty that are part of the lab, but also our students through our Crunch Student Design Challenge. So this is based on an academic year, and in the fall we run hackathons. We ran 3 hackathons around 3 of our key themes of the lab. One was on storytelling for environmental awareness, which was really looking at how do we bring transmedia storytelling and storytelling into our cities. Big data and privacy, as we really begin to think about connected living and how this is tracking everywhere I go. So you think about the knowledge graph, the interest graph, the social graph, the physical graph. That's a lot of data being collected on myself, so questions of privacy will continue to be pushed. So we're really looking at a privacy initiative. And then rediscovering the city through mobile apps. So one of the winner of this was Snap Basket, which actually started in a classroom, and we're further refining and building upon their idea in the Incubator. So our Incubator is a 10 to 15-week program in the spring. We've got 7 teams who are starting in about 20 minutes to actually take them from their concept all the way to minimum viable product. So how we're different than, say, Marshall's Greif Center or Viterbi's Startup Garage is we really focus on the social and cultural aspect of each of their ideas. We really focus on user engagement and audience. A lot of these students have come with like, I've got a great idea, but they've never really talked to their users first. So they're just building without thinking about their people. So that's one thing we're working on. And this I welcome you to come to our Evening of Innovation. That's going to be on April 23rd, where we'll have a demos, and the 7 teams will pitch their idea, and the group that comes will actually vote in real time for the winner. That's our startup in residence. So.
Yeah, so I mean, just a plug for the Crunch thing, which is going to expand next year into what we're calling Launchpad. We've got a very nice grant to do that. We're going to build a hack lab that will have all sorts of things like 3D printers, where Neon Tommy is laser now. We'll have all sorts of cool tools for you to play with, and it'll be so combining the virtual and the physical in one space. We also, just want you to understand that we really think that this key thing of LA as the center of what we call the imagination economy is an important part. We're really fortunate that one of the research associates from the lab, Peter Marks, has now become the Chief Innovation and Technology Officer for the City of LA. So we're going to have a very close partnership with the City of Los Angeles in building new kinds of applications, new things. We're already talking about taking a room in 20 or 30 libraries in the city and making them into little maker spaces for the local people to play with 3D printing and all sorts of other things. So we want you to join us. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask me right now. We got about 3 more minutes. Questions? Okay, well.
How do you convince, one of the things I think that all of us are trying to figure out, and 2 previous speakers representing the lab have been very successful. How do you start from nothing and go to convince one of these groups, business, government, to play with us?
Well,
maybe you have said even about, a handbook is not the right term, but sort of best practices for other centers or school programs to go from 0 to being engaged with. Is that one process, a short process?
okay, so our process was, Ernie, as you know, you acted as a little bit of a venture capitalist, but the idea was that we had very quickly to become self-sufficient. So we had to go outside of the university for funding. And so that naturally took us to the companies that we knew that were interested in trying to figure out where the world was going. And quite honestly, even a company like Walt Disney that we're going to start working with next week, for all the research and development budgets they have, they're not really looking 5 years ahead. They're looking a year ahead. And so we think that the ability to work with a lab like ours and the kind of brain power that we have is useful for them to test out ideas And so, I mean, all I could say is, we've been almost working for 4 years, and every single company that's ever been a supporter has continued to be a supporter year after year. The one company that went away from us, Mattel, is now coming back. So they realized that they missed the kind of input that we gave them. So
Let me ask you and Marty, what part of this is a mix of the fact that, as John showed in one of his slides, global demand is going like this, and Hollywood's ability to supply that's going either stagnant or just going on rate of inflation. So how much of it is environmental, and how much of it is that the Lear Center and AIL started to ask, and maybe we weren't asking as aggressively in the past?
How much of what?
How much of the growth in partnerships that we've seen in your shop and in Jonathan's shop reflects changes out in the real world, and how much of it reflects that we just said, hey, let's go ask, and we could have done this 5 years ago?
no, I think,
think it was the right
quite,
time.
I think when we first started to talk about these, you know, what I call the interregnum, the old is dying, the new is not quite yet born. When we started to talk about that 3.5 years ago, nobody was really listening very much. But today, every one of the companies we work with is going as fast as they can to put everything they can on the internet, making it accessible to tablets, smartphones, every device that they can possibly do. And so I think what we were saying for 3 years is all of a sudden, oh, yeah, you were right. Okay, maybe we should listen. And that's been essentially the core to our success.
Marty, is that?
I would say in our case, it was because more than anything else, we conceptualized the idea that entertainment had become the most important domain, swallowing all other domains in society around the world. And that's something that we did in 1998, which led to the Annenberg School having an entertainment track, 11 new entertainment courses, and a new entertainment minor, and a new research center about entertainment. And having led in that area, as people came to the realization that there was something to that, they were then interested in working with us because they saw us as having an idea. So it's the idea that led to the support.
I think what I hear you both say is that you developed powerful ideas and concepts, and you just kept repeating it, and eventually the world figured out that those were important concepts.
Yeah, it also turns out not to be a stupid idea.
Right. But I think I think especially in this town, you know, the relationship between universities and Hollywood has not been, let's say, the most robust. And so maybe this is a lesson for all of us, is just a good idea repeated a lot and a lot and a lot, and eventually hopefully people.
In the back?
Have we considered partnerships with high schools or maybe having some sort of summer program?
You want to talk about the work you did with JFK?
Yeah. So we did. We were funded, not currently, but in the past, within the past 4 years, we were funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where we connected with the Robert F. Kennedy Community Schools in the MacArthur Park area, which are 6 public schools, and developed an entire, participatory learning professional development program for the K-12 teachers that worked very closely with researchers in the lab, because when we started the Innovation Lab, we merged new media literacies that Henry Jenkins brought from MIT to the Innovation Lab. So participatory learning is like a key component of what we do in the lab, of community outreach and connecting. I would say also that where we're seeing connections to K-12 is the students that are coming to Crunch. And Rossier being on our research council, one of our Crunch student teams is College Knowledge, which is developing a new type of platform, and they're saying this doesn't happen at Rossier, so we're coming here to help the next wave of education.
Can I add on to that?
Yeah.
I understand it's teacher
Yeah, so another partnership we have is Idea LA, and actually on the 28th, there'll be high school students who will be coming and pitching their startup ideas, and there's a judge of panels here at the lab that are going to be giving them feedback. So in little ways, we try connecting with the high school students. We haven't thought about like a boot camp or anything like that, because I think we're too young to do that, but we're trying to build connections.
Let me say on that note that one of the things that I've been wrestling with Michael especially, and also with Larry, is we have a pretty fragmented relationship right now with various communities. You know, we have interactive, the metamorphosis, we have high school programs, and they're very disparate. And so one of the things that we're wrestling with and we're looking for some ideas for is there a way we can put sort of a wire frame around all of the things we're doing in the community and increase the impact and also the likelihood of funding, and also involve more of our students. Right now, we, I think, have a tiny handful of Annenberg students who are engaged with the community. And I'd like to see that increase. So maybe this is something that we can draw on what the various centers have been doing or would like to do. So that's going to be a big issue next year, a big push. So let me thank the AIL folks.